But you can tell when you go through this that Capital Armory and Griffin Armament really do their best to smooth out a lot of the pain points that I really feel like are put there on purpose just to discourage you from purchasing or owning a suppressor. And I really think the Griffin Suppressor to Your Door program is one of the easiest processes to complete your Form 4 application and receive your suppressor directly to your door. I highly recommend this process and give them a massive thumbs up for the work they put in. Going forward, I like knowing that, getting a second suppressor after having already done this process, it's only easier. And I'm sure that's gonna piss somebody off that getting a suppressor is now even easier to do for me now. Hey Wizards, welcome back to part 2 of our video series on how to purchase a suppressor. And I now have my Griffin Dual Lock 5 suppressor in hand, so let's go over all the last steps. Today we'll go through the final steps of the Griffin Suppressor to Your Door program together and look at everything you get when you receive your package. We'll also make sure to go over all the ATF wait times, along with kind of the whole process and the whole timeline as to how long it takes from initial purchase all the way to when it arrived at my door. As a reminder though, the whole point of this video series is to demystify and make suppressor buying as simple and easy as possible, and kind of give the middle finger to the government who just want to gum up the whole process and make it as annoying as possible and kind of discourage you from ownership. You'd also be super surprised how many super mad comments I got in the first video about the idea of making suppressor ownership easier. There was just so much fear, which makes no sense, about taking something from being as loud as a jet engine down to being as loud as a jackhammer. It was very, very confusing. It's a safety device, people. Stop being afraid of sound. And remember that knowledge is the way you defeat fear, so let's keep this thing going. Now, if you missed part 1, I'll link to it up here, and in that video, we went all the way from purchase to ATF eform certification if you need to catch up as to where we're at. Now, for those of you that have been following along, here's a quick reminder just to bring you back up to speed also. I said thanks and got an immediate confirmation email from Capital Armory and another one from the ATF notifying me my Form 4 application has been submitted. And that's it, super duper easy so far. And now I just wait for the ATF to approve my Form 4, and I'll do a follow-up video to this to let you know about how long that wait time is. Now though, we have the fun part of waiting to see how fast or how slow the wheels of government turn. All right, so we're at ATF approval. Now, there's some editing and uploading and all those things that are happening in the background. So all my timelines are kind of happening in the past, but I sent in my ATF eform for approval on April 11th, which I think was a Thursday. And I got my approval back super fast. I think it was the following Monday I was approved, so it was really pretty quick, 5 days total, 5 or 6 days. Now, I wanna pause though, really big asterisk. This is for, this timeline is for individual certifications. I did hear that trusts are still taking the usual 6 to 8 months, which, why? I don't know, because of some sort of brain damage, but you also have to have all the paperwork, all the fingerprints, and all the things for everyone that's in the trust, so it is just inherently more complicated. Now though, let me show you everything you get, or the forms you should look out for when you finally get approved and you get everything from Capital Armory so you can move on to the next step. After you certify, upon approval, you'll get your first email from the ATF eforms website that your request status has changed and mine was updated to approved. Moments later, I got an email from Capital Armory stating my Form 4 was approved and they're working on my final ATF eforms, and I'll receive a follow-up email on how they'll deliver the suppressor directly to me. Later on the day, I got the last email from Capital Armory, again stating my form was approved, and it had my attached ATF eform approval documentation. See, like I said, April 11th submitted, April 16th approved. And it's cool that Capital Armory, way before you even receive your suppressor, you receive a digital copy of your ATF approval, because then you can just file it all away. I took a copy of this and put it in a secure file cloud storage so I can access it with my phone if I ever needed to for some random reason. But this last email also goes into detail about the 4473 process, and some of this is mildly annoying because we're doing the non-over-the-counter process, which has its own annoying and stupid rules. As noted from Capital Armory, the email explains that the next step is the 4473 that allows the silencer to be sent straight to you. They also explain the step where the Chief Law Enforcement Officer, or CLEO, must be notified, and there is a mandatory 7-day waiting period. Now, this part doesn't make any sense to me. Why is there a mandatory 7-day waiting period for something I've already been approved for when I've already given my fingerprints and address and all these other things? It just doesn't make any sense. But it just adds another week onto the process. You don't have to go anywhere or do anything, so at least there's that. I would say it would be pretty cool if Capital Armory would allow you to transfer your suppressor to an FFL at this point instead of going over through the non-over-the-counter process, because then you could just go pick it up from your FFL at this point. And also there's another step where the suppressor has to be delivered to you and you have to sign for it, so you have to make sure someone's home also. Anyway, we'll get to all that. So for the next step, you need to fill out the 4473. You go to the tools page, the tools.capital armory page, not the e-commerce page, don't go to that one. And then you fill out the 4473. It'll ask you a bunch of questions and it'll make sure you have a bunch of information available. And one of them will ask you if you know who the Chief Law Enforcement Officer in your county is. I didn't know who this was, so I called my local sheriff and let them know what I was doing, and they verified his name and title, and it matched his name and title on their sheriff website. Now though, I don't know if I really needed to do this besides just to verify, because there's actually a database within the 4473 process that also had his name in there also. But it may be useful just to call and verify so you know you have the right person. But you complete the 4473 like always. Make sure to spend time here and make sure your name, details, and all your answers are correct before submitting to Capital Armory. This is probably the part of the form that most people will mess up, so make sure to take your time here, don't rush through it. And at the end of it, they'll also give you kind of a database lookup, like I said, that you'll put in your county, and it'll list your Chief Law Enforcement Officer that you can then use to just auto-complete the form and finish everything up. At this point, just review everything one more time, make sure it's all correct, and then hit submit. And here, you just wait for Capital Armory to review everything and sign everything, and then send you notification that they've sent it off to the CLEO for review. For me, this was about 2 days from the 4473 submission to getting notified it was being mailed out. Here they explain that the 4473 mailing, 7-day wait, and then suppressor shipment means we're about 2 weeks out at this time. It also says an adult signature is required when it's delivered. I don't want to get into too much legalese about ownership and all that thing. Just know that an adult, someone over 18, has to sign for the package from UPS. About a week later, I got another notification that the CLEO has accepted my non-over-the-counter 4473 and that the countdown has begun. Here I got a good, reasonable shipment date so I could plan for when I needed to be home and available. Again, this part of the process is a little bit annoying because when you normally purchase a suppressor and you get to this point, you could just go to your FFL and just go pick it up. But if you're rural or if you work long hours like I used to, it was often super hard to get out to my FFL anyway. So waiting an extra week probably wasn't that big of a deal for me or for someone who has to make a long drive anyway. But I would like to have an option of skipping the 7-day CLEO nonsense when the feds have my prints and my address and everything else. For the next bit, right on cue as they predicted, I got a shipping notification email that said my suppressor is shipping soon and to keep an eye on the tracking. Boy, do they mean this. Keep an eye on that tracking. Like, I checked it when I first got the email on a Friday and it hadn't really been updated yet. But then it arrived on Monday and I hadn't checked it since then. So just be aware of how fast they actually ship these. I got super lucky and I just happened to be getting back from the range right when the UPS guy was walking up. And it makes me kind of note that I do wish there was one more email from Capital Armory that they would send in like big bold letters like, your package is arriving on this date, so that you know and you're aware and you don't have to like randomly remember to check the tracking because it could be arriving like tomorrow. Waiting around for a package all day that requires an adult signature can be a pretty big pain in the ass too, because the UPS like delivery window is usually from like somewhere between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., which is not very useful at all. So I would have liked to have a little bit more of a heads up as to when it was arriving. Now though, let's take a look at the box and let's see everything you get both from Capital Armory and from Griffin Armament when you get your whole package in. The first thing you see in your box are all the goodies from Capital Armory. They actually send you a paper copy of your approved Form 4 in a Ziploc bag, along with a letter, thank you card, and a patch. They also include a really cool Capital Armory mitt for removing your silencer safely. You'd be surprised how often I try to remove hot suppressors with thin, useless tactical gloves, so this is pretty awesome to throw in my range bag. Now here's what we really want with our all-new Griffin suppressor. Here we have the FDE Dual Lock 5 that just looks awesome, and I'm excited to try it out. Also included is a badass suppressor sleeve that keeps it from getting marred up in your bag. In the box, there was also some cards noting the suppressor has been test fired to verify quality assurance, which is awesome. There's also a card on how the dual lock works so you can attach it, along with a card on making sure to check final alignment with an alignment rod. Here I went ahead and installed everything and then just installed my alignment rod, just verify everything, make sure nothing was touching, and yep, everything looks good and we're all set to go. And no, this isn't a fancy rod, this is like a $2 Harbor Freight special. Oh, there's also more goodies in here. There's a ton of included stickers with a bunch of dual lock ones and just a bunch of other cool swag included. Lastly, there is a product manual that explains about the suppressor and all the cleaning and use details you can reference. But that's it, suppressor in hand and installed, and I think the whole timeline for the Griffin Suppressor to Your Door program took about 6 weeks. Now, I did take my sweet time in getting my fingerprints done digitally, so I could have probably shaved off like a week and a half in that whole process, but now that Capital Armory has my prints, I don't even have to worry about that anymore. So as an individual, I'd say a 5 to 6 week wait time is about normal for your first time through the program and doing your first suppressor purchase. And then about a month for all follow-up suppressor purchases. And overall, looking at the whole thing, like knowing it all from beginning to end, I'd say it was pretty easy. Some of the only tricky bits was the fingerprints was one that we mentioned in the first video, which we talked about many times. Thankfully, you can just do them digitally, and you really only have to do them once. Plus, you have all the fingerprint cards and all the instructions. It's really not that bad. The other kind of annoying part was having to look up my CLEO for the 4473 process, but I just didn't know that they already had the CLEO listed in the database when you go to actually complete that form. And the last annoyance is really just nothing to do with Griffin Armament or Capital Armory at all, but it's that 7-day waiting period for the CLEO that just didn't seem to make any sense with all the fingerprints and all the other hoops that I've already jumped through. But you can tell when you go through this that Capital Armory and Griffin Armament really do their best to smooth out a lot of the pain points that I really feel like are put there on purpose just to discourage you from purchasing or owning a suppressor. And I really think the Griffin Suppressor to Your Door program is one of the easiest processes to complete your Form 4 application and receive your suppressor directly to your door. I highly recommend this process and give them a massive thumbs up for the work they put in. Going forward, I like knowing that, getting a second suppressor after having already done this process, it's only easier. And I'm sure that's gonna piss somebody off that getting a suppressor is now even easier to do for me now. Now though, stay tuned as we test out our Dual Lock 5 suppressor along with our Dual Lock blast shield on our Griffin Armament Mark II setup. I have no idea why, but I have full faith that testing this safety device is going to make a whole lot of people angry. And it gives me a lot of joy because that's going to be a whole lot of fun. But I hope this video on going over the whole Griffin Armament Suppressor to Your Door program really helped to demystify the process, let you know what to expect and what to go through, and made it easier for you to purchase your first suppressor or to just get started with Capital Armory and get more and more suppressors. I would absolutely love that. And then we can all together make common use of suppressors a real thing. Now though, I want to say thanks to all of our Patreon members and our YouTube supporters. You guys make it possible we can make cool videos like this where we go through the whole process and make everybody smarter and maybe remove some fear out in the community. And I want to say thanks to everyone that likes, comments, and subscribes. Comment down below what your favorite Griffin suppressor is. I want to hear about it because maybe we need to try a new one after this. All right, everyone, Walsh out. Now, I don't know, I don't want to test it. I don't know if YouTube changed their policies, but they had a policy for a period of time where removing this or putting it on was considered a weapon manufacturing somehow. It's literally turning something. So I don't know how you can manufacture a whole firearm just by spinning something together, but I'm not gonna mess with it. The dual lock is really cool too, by the way. If you haven't messed with that, hilariously, Griffin has a bunch of videos on how it works. Plus they give you some cool diagrams. It just kind of spins on and then has a cool locking collar that locks it in place. I'm really looking forward to testing it out. This whole rifle has done great. This whole process has been great. Working with Griffin has been great. They're just wonderful people. So if you want a good place to invest your money, I highly recommend Griffin Armament. They're really good people, and I've enjoyed them a lot. Yep, I think that's it. We're gonna go test a ton of stuff. I have a bunch of stuff being baked. We have the whole rifle review yet to do. We have the suppressor review. We have the blast shield to do. I have this cool optic from Griffin still to show you. So we have a whole bunch coming this summer. So just stay tuned. Lots of stuff. And the Snatch Gen 2 is, it's fantastic. Okay, seriously, I'm gonna quit rambling. Get out of here. Have a good one. Hope this was helpful.